She was the most famous pilot in the world. In 1937, Amelia Earhart set out to circle the globe and vanished over the Pacific. No wreckage, no trace, only questions. Atchison, Kansas, 1897. In a house above the Missouri River, a girl is born who will one day own the skies, and whose ending no one has ever solved. Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly the Atlantic alone, the icon of a generation. But her name holds two stories at once: the pioneer who pushed every limit, and the greatest mystery in the history of flight. This is both, her whole life, from a homemade backyard roller coaster to a final radio call over the Pacific. Amelia Mary Earhart was born on July 24, 1897, in her grandparents' house in Atchison, Kansas. Her grandfather, Alfred Otis, was a respected judge and bank president. The home on the bluff above the Missouri was wealthy and well-regarded. Amelia spent most of the school year there with her grandparents and summers with her parents in Kansas City. Two worlds, and it showed early which one the girl belonged to. Because home was anything but steady. Her father, Edwin, a railroad lawyer, struggled with drink and kept losing work. The family moved constantly, 6 schools in 4 years. Stability came from an unusual mother. Amy Otis had been one of the first women to climb the 14,000-foot Pikes Peak. She didn't push her daughters into the role of proper little girls. She urged them to go and explore. And explore Amelia did. She climbed trees, rode her sled belly down like the boys, hunted rats in the barn with a .22, and collected worms, moths, even a toad. An aunt brought the sisters bloomers, the loose trousers of the women's movement. In them, the girls felt free and athletic, and also like outcasts among the children in skirts. Their strict grandmother disapproved of all of it. In 1904, around the age of 7, she built her first machine, a homemade roller coaster off the roof of the tool shed, the rails greased with lard. The first run ended in a crash. Torn dress, split lip. Her verdict? It felt exactly like flying. Later, as a teenager, she kept a scrapbook, newspaper clippings about women breaking into men's professions, film directing, law, advertising, management, engineering. This is where the real foundation was laid. She saw her first real airplane at 11 and was thoroughly unimpressed. The fascination would take years. In 1917, Amelia visited her sister in Toronto and stayed. As a nurse's aide, she cared for soldiers wounded in the First World War. Toronto was then a hub of Empire Aviation. She listened to pilots talk about their missions and began visiting airfields. The spark was glowing, not yet aflame. After the war, she enrolled in pre-med in New York, then quit. The practical side bored her. In 1920, she moved to her parents in California, and there, on a December day, everything changed. At an air show in Long Beach, her father paid $10 for a sightseeing ride. The pilot was Frank Hawks. The plane climbed only a few hundred feet, but that was enough. As soon as I left the ground, I knew I had to fly, she would later say. The spark had become a flame. She took any job she could, telephone clerk, photographer, even truck driver, to pay for lessons. In January 1921, she had her first. Her teacher was Netta Snook, one of the country's few female flight instructors. Within a year, Amelia bought her first plane, a bright yellow Kinner Airster she named the Canary. In 1922, she set a women's altitude record, near 14,000 feet. In 1923, she became the 16th woman in the United States to earn a pilot's license. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic alone, and the world asked, when will a woman do it? The wealthy Amy Guest wanted to be that woman, but her family forbade it. She funded the venture and looked for a stand-in. The publisher George P. Putnam, a master of promotion, ran the selection. From several women pilots, among them Ruth Elder and Ruth Nichols, he chose a young Boston social worker, Amelia Earhart, well-spoken, photogenic, and strikingly like Lindbergh. On June 17, 1928, the tri-motor Friendship lifted off from Newfoundland. At the controls sat Wilmer Bill Stoltz. Lewis Slim Gordon was mechanic and relief pilot. Amelia Earhart came along as a passenger. About 20 hours and 40 minutes later, the plane landed in Wales. What happened next, no one could have predicted. It was not the pilots who were celebrated. It was the woman on board. A ticker tape parade in New York, a reception with President Coolidge. The press christened her Lady Lindy. The wire services crowned her Queen of the Air. Earhart knew she hadn't touched the controls. She said she'd felt like a sack of potatoes and resolved to earn the fame one day. Putnam turned her into a brand. Her book about the flight, 20 hours, 40 minutes, was pushed hard. Lecture tours booked, her face placed in advertisements, luggage, a fashion line of her own, and cigarettes. The Lucky Strike endorsement cost her an offer from a women's magazine. Critics called Putnam a puppet master, a Svengali. But Earhart was no one's tool. She used the frenzy on purpose. The money from books, lectures, and ads paid for her own flying and her own cause. As early as 1929, she helped found the 99s, the first organization of women pilots, and became its first president. The fame was borrowed. What she built with it was hers. For 4 years, Amelia Earhart carried a fame that had not come from her own cockpit. In 1932, she set out to earn it. On May 20th, she took off alone from Newfoundland, bound for Europe, solo, across the Atlantic. Only one human being had done it before, Charles Lindbergh, 5 years earlier. The night became a fight for survival. Ice spilt on the wings, an altimeter failed, flames licked from a cracked exhaust, fuel dripped into the cabin. Instead of reaching Paris as planned, she brought the plane down wherever land appeared, a pasture in Northern Ireland. A startled farmhand asked where she'd come from. From America, she answered. The first woman across the Atlantic alone, this time at the controls. Now the honors were earned. She became the first woman to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross. In 1935, she did what had killed men before her. The first solo flight from Hawaii to California, across the open Pacific. Earhart broke record after record and stayed always an ambassador for aviation and for women in it. In 1935, Purdue University brought her on as an advisor for women's careers and for aeronautics. Its president, Edward Elliott, arranged the funds for a flying laboratory, a twin-engine Lockheed Electra 10E. Alongside it, Earhart tended her brand, plain, practical women's clothing in her own style. The pilot was now also a promise that a woman could be everything at once. Between the 2 Atlantic flights, her private life changed too. George Putnam, her promoter, courted her again and again. Only after several refusals did she say yes. On February 7th, 1931, they married. On the morning of the wedding, Earhart pressed a letter into his hand. She would accept no medieval code of fidelity, she wrote, and asked him to let her go after a year if they were unhappy. A remarkably modern arrangement, partnership as equals, not a cage. The couple had no children. Putnam brought 2 sons from his first marriage. The marriage held, 6 years, until she vanished. Earhart kept her own name, her own plans, her own money. Some called it a marriage of convenience. For her, it was the only shape in which a woman of her time could stay free. Her standing opened the highest doors. With First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, she struck up a friendship. Once she took her on a night flight over Washington, both still in evening gowns. What drove her? Earhart said plainly. She wanted to do it because she wanted to, and women had to try things, as men had always tried. It was never only about records. It was about proof. In 1936, Earhart fixed on her greatest goal, around the world. And not by any route, but along the Equator, the longest, hardest line of all. It would be the first such flight by any human, man or woman. The Lockheed Electra was rebuilt into a flying base, packed with tanks and radio gear. For navigation across endless oceans, she needed the best. Fred Noonan came aboard, a seasoned navigator from the pioneer days of the Pacific routes. The Hollywood stunt pilot, Paul Mance, advised her and warned that she wasn't ready for takeoffs at full fuel load. It would not be the only warning that went unheard. On St. Patrick's Day, 1937, the first attempt began, heading west. It ended in Honolulu. On takeoff, the heavily loaded Electra swung out of control, skidded across the runway, and the landing gear collapsed. No one was hurt, but the plane was badly damaged. It was shipped back and repaired over weeks. This time, she reversed direction, eastward, with the weather systems. In late May 1937, the second journey began, from Oakland by way of Miami. Leg by leg, the Electra worked its way around the globe. South America, Africa, the Middle East, South Asia. After some 22,000 miles, she reached Lae, New Guinea, on June 29th. Only a few hops across the Pacific remained. The hardest came first. On July 2nd, 1937, the Electra lifted off from Lae. Ahead lay more than 2,500 miles of open Pacific, and at the end, a target the size of a speck of dust, Howland Island, a strip of coral barely 2 miles long. Finding it demanded perfect navigation and perfect radio. Both failed. The Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited off Howland to guide her in, but the radios worked on frequencies that couldn't reach each other. A direction finder died because its batteries were drained. A friend of Earhart's who could have coordinated the agencies was no longer in office. A chain of small failures settled over the greatest flight of her life. In the morning hours, the Itasca heard her, garbled, urgent. Fuel was running low, Earhart reported. At 8:43 a.m. came her last clear transmission. She was running a line north and south. Then, nothing. Over the Pacific, the contact broke off, in broad daylight, mid-conversation. What followed was the largest air and sea search the U.S. Navy had ever mounted. Ships, planes, weeks across tens of thousands of square miles of ocean. They found nothing. On January 5th, 1939, Amelia Earhart was officially declared dead. No wreck, no bodies, no last word. And so, in that same moment, the mystery begins. 3 explanations have survived to this day, and not one is proven. The first, backed by most experts, the Electra ran out of fuel, went down near Howland, and sank in thousands of feet of water. The second theory leads to Nikumaroro, a lonely island southeast of Howland. Had Earhart and Noonan come down there, they would have been stranded castaways. In 1940, bones were found on the island, along with a sextant box and fragments of shoes. A 2018 reanalysis judged the measurements a strong match for Earhart. Some suspect giant coconut crabs scattered the remains. The third, most speculative theory claims a Japanese capture, propped up by a proof photograph that later fell apart. And today, nothing has been found. A 2024 sonar image that looked like a plane turned out to be a rock formation. Yet on satellite pictures of Nikumaroro, a plane-sized object lies in the lagoon, the Taraia Object. A Purdue University expedition plans to inspect it up close in 2026. At the same time, government files were ordered released. Nearly 90 years on, the search isn't over. It's heading into a new round. What remains is more than a riddle. Amelia Earhart moved the line of what a woman was thought capable of, in the cockpit and far beyond it. The pilots' organization she helped found still flies today. Generations of aviators invoke her name. Perhaps that's the deepest irony. A woman who vanished without a trace has never really disappeared. As long as an object lies in the sand of a Pacific lagoon and people keep searching for answers, Amelia Earhart remains what she always was, a pioneer flying forward, into the open. Atchison, Kansas, 1897, to somewhere over the Pacific, 1937. The flight has never quite ended.